Hey friends, Tori here. So I am currently in Kenya and I wanted to share a little update with you, and I thought it would be fun to do like a little video update and share a little bit about what God has been doing here in Kenya during coronavirus. And I have some really cool stories to share you of the miraculous work of God and how God is working through this situation and how I have just seen Him in so many ways the last couple weeks. Um, Not to mention, give you a little update about how things are going and just to check in. So, the first thing I wanted to say, so I still am in Kenya and I am planning on staying here even though there is the coronavirus thing. I feel really safe here, so for those of you worrying, I am safe. But just to give you a little like story time of what has been going on Wednesday the 11th, I was over at a friend's house and I got a call. It was about 4:30 in the afternoon, and I got a call from Brian, who is the contingency officer but also the dean of men. And I get this call from him, and normally when he calls me, it's a child safety related thing, like I need to go for a meeting or something like that. And I get this call, I pick it up, and I'm like, "Hey Brian, what's up?" And he's like, "Are you available for a meeting?" And I immediately knew something was wrong because he always calls me when there's something wrong. And I said, "Yep, where do you need me and when?" And he's like, "Can you come to the travel office at 5?" And when he said the travel office, I had a feeling what was going to happen. Um, but I immediately headed down to the travel office, and in the travel office, I met up with my friend Christine, who runs the travel office, and she told me that the school was going to make an announcement that night that they were closing and that they were going to close early because of coronavirus, and they were going to send home all of the boarding students, and that she needed to figure out how to fly 284 students out of RVA as soon as possible, and she wanted my help. So, within minutes, the two of us were going through passports, looking up travel things. It was a huge task. So we had a little bit of advance notice. The students or the staff found out at 7. The students and the parents found out at 8. And we had a rolling departure, meaning we had 5 days to get 284 kids out of here. Now, just for a little bit of context, RVA is a boarding school for missionary kids. So the kids that go to the school live all across Africa. Their parents are all over the world, actually, but mostly in Africa. And the week earlier, Christine had to fly a student out for compassionate leave, and it had taken her 5 days to get a flight for one student. And now we had 5 days to get 284 students out of the school. It was crazy and a huge task. And so her and I and a few other people, Erica especially, started the huge task of trying to purchase flights and change flights because school was going to end in, I think, 3 weeks. So now all of the flights had been booked for midterm or for the end of term, which was going to happen in 3 weeks, needed to be now pushed forward, and countries were closing their borders, and it was a ginormous task. But crazy enough, within 96 hours and the help of an incredible team, we had all but 5 of the 284 students either home or in transit to home. And within another day or two, the rest of the remaining 5 actually got to be with their parents too. And honestly, I saw so many miracles happen in that travel office. Like, I cannot believe how God was with us and working with us and was parting the Red Sea for these students to get home, because so many countries across Africa and across the world were closing their borders, and Kenya didn't have, well, I guess Kenya had 3 cases, but they were all contained, and we were pretty safe in Kenya, but we didn't know how quickly things were going to change, and things did change really quickly. We worked incredibly long hours. I'm pretty sure I was in the travel office more than I was at home. I would work from like 8 in the morning till 12 o'clock at night or 12:30 at night. And then the next morning I'd wake up and be back at the travel office at 6 or at 9, working again till midnight. And it was insane trying to coordinate all of those flights and buses and shuttles to the airport and overnights at a hotel called Mayfield before the kids could fly out either at night or the next morning. It was mind boggling crazy, but God parted the Red Seas to get all 284 students home. And honestly, it is such a miracle. Like, I am just I am just blown away by what I was able to see God do in that travel office. Just a couple of stories to share with you because I think it's important to share stories of God at work in the midst of us. So here's one story. We had two students who had to fly to North Africa, and they flew to one country in North Africa and were supposed to catch a flight to the next country, the country that their parents were in. But unfortunately, the airport in the second country was closed, so they got stuck in the first country. And I'm obviously not sharing the country name for protection and safety reasons. Thankfully, they had friends or family friends that were in that country that they got stranded in. So these two students were with family friends in this country trying to figure out how to get across the border to the country where their parents were in. And I think they finally figured out that if the one family who was holding onto the kids drove up to the border and the kids like walked across the border, the parents could pick them up on the other side. And then the kids could be in self quarantine for 14 days in the country that they were supposed to be in with their family. And so they finally figured that out. They get to the border, the kids get across at 12:06. At 12 o'clock that day, so 6 minutes earlier, the government of that country announced that they were closing their borders and that no one would be able to get across. Now, I don't know about you, but I am so thankful for either like slow internet or somebody who didn't have enough data on their phone or somebody who didn't check their email fast enough at the border because those kids got across 6 minutes after the government made that announcement and they got home safely to their parents, which I honestly, like, I can only describe that as a miracle. Another story was the story of three boys who were going to Chad, which is actually where my sister is and where Andrew is. And these boys flew back to Chad, and when they arrived in Chad, the government basically told them that these three kids who were in I think grades 7, 8, and 9 were going to have to be quarantined for 14 days within a government base or a hotel by themselves. So can you picture this? A grade 7, a grade 8, and a grade 9 quarantined for 14 days away from family and friends, away from people that they know when they got to this country. Now, thankfully, one of the kids' dads is a pediatrician, and he was able to go and argue his case at the airport and say that he would supervise their quarantine because he's a doctor. And his French and Arabic was so strong, and because he was a doctor, he was able to argue so well that those kids got to get released from the airport and didn't have to go into quarantine. My sister sent me a picture of the youngest boy who, this is his first year at RVA, and he is running across the road towards his mom. And honestly, it brought tears to my eyes. Like all of the long hours, all of the craziness in that travel office, to get to see that picture of that grade 7 boy running across the road to his parents. Oh, even now it makes me want to cry because it's just such a beautiful picture of how God parted the Red Seas for those kids to get home. We had other kids who got denied boarding here in Kenya, but then were able to catch a flight the next day. We had kids who got into countries like hours before the borders and the airports closed and were sending everybody away. We had kids who had to fly back to the US because that's where their parents happened to be, and they got into the country before all of the restrictions were put on. Honestly, it was just so amazing to see We even had kids whose passports no longer had valid student IDs in, and we managed to have a couple of Kenyan workers here at RVA who were able to take the passports to the immigration office and get those stamps in there on Thursday and Friday so the kids could fly out Saturday. It was just so amazing to get to be a part of that. I mean, it was exhausting and draining, but it was such a beautiful picture of how God is at work, even in the midst of chaos, even in the midst of pain and scary, traumatic times. Um, but to think that all of those kids are safe at home with their families in 30 plus different countries just um, is just such an amazing thing to get to see. And I'm so glad that RVA made the decision to close the school earlier. They made that decision on Wednesday. On Sunday, the government of Kenya announced that all boarding schools had to be closed immediately. And I don't know how we would have gotten kids home in 3 days, which was what the government was giving us. Instead, we had started 5 days earlier and managed to get them all home safely and book flights for everybody in the chaos. We had so many incredible staff members at RVA who offered to help drive, who offered to be go on shuttles, to be chaperones, to take kids to the airport, to take kids where they needed to be. Student health, who made sure all the kids were healthy before they got on planes so nobody got stuck anywhere because of a fever or anything. I had a friend who let me stay at her house, which was so nice because her house is like a 2-minute walk to the travel office. And since I had to be there such late hours and so early, I'm just so incredibly thankful for that. I think that we are in a really scary time and there's a lot of unknown, and I know a lot of people are really afraid. But for me, I have seen God work in really amazing ways. One of the ways that just has been so touching and so meaningful to me is seeing the sense of community here. Now I'm going to be really vulnerable for a second and I might cry, so just like this is your like forewarning, trigger warning. When I first came here, I felt really lonely. And I think being single and being on the mission field, being in a new place, an unfamiliar place, can be really hard sometimes, and you feel really alone, like you've left all of your friends and you've left all of your family and everything, and you left everything that's comfortable. And December was really hard. Like I know a lot of you know because I spent Christmas here by myself and I didn't know very many people. It was really hard. Um, and there was a day when I was in the kitchen cooking and I cut my finger and it started to bleed. And it wasn't really bad, but it wasn't bad enough that like it was bleeding for a little while. And I had this like really sinking feeling inside of my heart that if something bad were to happen to me here in Kenya, that I would be all by myself. Like I didn't know how to get to the hospital. I mean, I know it's nearby, but I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know what I would do, who would make sure that my jobs were done. I just had no clue. I felt so desperately alone, and I longed for a sense of community. And in the last few weeks, God has just given me such a beautiful picture of what the family of God is supposed to look like. Like a week before all of this went down and we were sending the kids home, there was a staff member here who got really, really sick. And she ended up having to go to the hospital in Nairobi. And the incredible community of staff members here at RVA rallied around her and her husband. They took care of her dorm and her dorm girls. They filled in for jobs, like the husband was a math teacher and somebody filled in for him. They took food to them. People were at the hospital with them all the time, traveling back and forth from Nairobi to Kajabi, which is where we live. People made sure that their pantries and their kitchen was stocked for when they came home. They had family members come from the US to see them, and people picked up their family members, took care of the family members. And when the husband and wife were better enough to be able to come back to school, people had made cards, people fed them meals. Just the way that the community like came around them and supported them in that time was just so beautiful to see. And then with all of this, with the travel and having to get all of these students out here and just the chaos of all of that and seeing how this community like rallied together to make this happen, it was another beautiful picture to me of the community of God at work here in RVA. And for me, I think the biggest takeaway and the most amazing part of all of this was like for the first time that I've been out here, I haven't felt alone. And it's like so incredible to know that I get to be a part of this incredible community. And that if anything were to happen to me, if I really did cut my finger really bad, or if I got coronavirus or something like that, like I would not be alone. People would take me to the hospital, people would stay with me, people would fill in where needed, people would just be there to help, and I wouldn't be alone. And I think that that is just like a beautiful thing that God has been teaching me in this time, in this period right now of chaos. And now I don't wish that staff member got sick, and I don't wish that we had this coronavirus thing, but I am just so amazed and touched of what God has been teaching me in and through the midst of this. So I hope that those stories of miracles and how God parted the Red Sea has been encouraging to you. And I hope that God reveals himself to you through all of this chaos, like whatever that means, whether it means showing you that there really is a sense of community and a sense of hope, or maybe there's something else that he wants to teach you. But I guess my question is, are your eyes open and ready to see what God wants to teach you through all this chaos? Because I guarantee there's something that he wants to show you and something that he wants to tell you about. So just a mini update while I have your attention. Everything is going well. The school is technically closed. There are not students here. School is not running. I still have lots of child safety work to do, even though there's no kids, like policy writing and things to get done. So there's still lots to do, as well as planning out how we're going to teach our school online when school is supposed to return at the end of April. And there's just lots of things to do. So I'm staying busy and I'm staying healthy, and I'm a part of an incredible community. I get to enjoy the beautiful outdoors and just to see the birds singing and the monkeys swinging and all of those things here in Kenya. And I'm staying healthy and safe. And I just feel so secure knowing that I am exactly where I am supposed to be, and that I'm exactly where God has me for a reason, and I am a part of an incredible community, and I just feel so incredibly thankful for that. So I hope that you and your families are staying safe, and I'm praying for you, and I thank you so much for praying for us here at RVA. And right now, the virus is pretty contained in Kenya, and it's about an hour, 2 hours away from where we are now, where all of the cases have been. So hopefully, it continues to remain contained. If it doesn't, they'll probably lock down the school a little bit more so that people can't get in, because there are still staff members and their families here. So I just feel like I'm in a really safe place right now, and that's why I've chosen not to come home. But just know that my love is with you guys, and I miss you, and I hope that you're all doing well. And I would love to hear how you are too, and if there's anything particular or specific that I can pray for, you can leave a comment and let me know, or DM me. I would be happy to pray for you. And I just am so thankful for you. So I hope that you have a lovely day and that you wash your hands. Bye.